My parents left me out of their wedding, so I exposed them online. I was recently forgotten about on the day of my parents' wedding. My parents have been together for about 25 years, but they never actually got married. That's why when my dad, 50, proposed to my mother, 49, on their anniversary, which they have always celebrated on the date my mother found out she was pregnant with my eldest sister, everyone, including me, was elated and celebrated the occasion with great joy. This happened all the way back in February. They immediately jumped into wedding planning, deciding very early on a small event in Hawaii with just the closest family and friends for an intimate ceremony. Almost immediately, my mother asked my sister to be her maid of honor, and my dad asked my brother to be his groomsman. I wasn't surprised or offended by this. My sister had always been a mommy's girl, and they both enjoyed spending time with each other, shopping and socializing, so they had a very close bond. And the same goes for my father and brother. They always played football together and messed around with cars. My father even trained my brother's team for a while in middle school. That had always left me as the odd one out. I tried to insert myself into my family's hobbies and groups that they had within our home, but was always rebuffed. Maybe they could sense that my interest on their activities wasn't all that genuine, or maybe they just didn't care. Either way, I was used to being the last and least important member of my family. Mom had sis and dad had bro. My parents had each other, and my two siblings were closer to each other than they ever were to me, leaving me very lonely and isolated in my own home. During the preparation for the wedding, initially it was suggested that I be the flower girl, but my sister thought that role would be more appropriate for her daughter, so that idea was quickly tossed away. Later on, my maternal grandmother suggested that I might read a poem or do a little bit of a speech during the ceremony, but both my parents refused because they wanted the wedding to be low-key, and they didn't think a cheesy and sappy speech would fit their vision, their literal words. I was still okay with all of this, even though it hurt to know I would be the only member of the family to not actually be part of the wedding party or have any role at all on the day. As the day approached, my parents and siblings got more and more caught up on all the wedding planning. I noticed my mom didn't invite me dress shopping, and that whenever they would have discussions about the venue or the event, I was left out. So I decided to see if they would realize that I wasn't being involved at all, and kept quiet, waiting for them to ask me something, anything, about the wedding, but that never happened. The wedding was set for 3 weeks ago, the end of August. The day before the departure, my mother casually asked if I had my luggage ready because we couldn't be late to the airport. I bluntly told her that I hadn't prepared anything. She got confused for a second and then snapped at me for not being prepared. I then asked her if I even had a ticket, and her face went pale. Yep, they hadn't even bought me a ticket, and I'm not even sure if I had a room or any accommodations once there. Even though I was the only person in my family without unstable income, I work as a part-time babysitter. My parents had bought first-class tickets for my siblings and the couple other friends that were attending the wedding, but had forgotten me. My mom told me not to make a big deal out of it and that they can just find me a low-cost ticket last minute from a cheap airline, but I just replied by asking her then what? Do I even have a dress for the ceremony? She went with sis to buy hers and all the other female guests months ago, but I wasn't, tea included. That's when my father came in and just told me to suck it up, and that I've never been a girly girl so I could just wear whatever. I got mad at this because, even though I'm not the most feminine girl on the planet, I would have loved to be included in such an important part of my parents' wedding, and it was about the fact that I was excluded for literally everything that had been going on for months. We all got into a fight with them, calling me entitled and accusing me of making myself small intentionally so they would forget me, like that is a valid excuse for ignoring a child. They ended up telling me that if I was going to keep this attitude, I might as well skip the whole thing altogether, to which I responded with a defiant fine and went to my room. Next morning, they all left for Hawaii without me. The ceremony was really small, but they all posted loads of pictures on Insta and Facebook about how perfect and magical that whole week was being. People realized quickly that I wasn't in any of the photos and asked my parents why, to which they replied that unfortunately, I had caught COVID before the trip and had to stay behind. My blood boiled at this. I don't know why this was the straw that broke the camel back for me, but it was. I decided to take a COVID test and published a picture of myself holding the negative test and captioned it "not sick at all, just forgotten." I tagged everyone that had questioned my absence from the trip and the wedding in the picture, and for good measure, also every person invited to it. I also wrote in the comments about how my parents had literally forgotten about anything to do with me until the day before parting and how they actually uninvited me. Most people were on my side and others couldn't believe it, and thought there must be something more to the story than what I was saying. But one thing is for certain, I completely ruined my parents' wedding, and their day was overshadowed by my confession. At first, I felt quite satisfied with myself for standing up on my own, but after a barrage of messages from my family calling me every name in the book, and later, when they came back, them furiously attacking me for my immature actions and my spoiled behavior, my pride deflated quickly, and I began to feel awful. I hate my family, and I hate being in this house, but I'm a minor and can't leave just yet. I do feel like I could have handled the situation better, though, and now I feel so depressed that I'm second guessing everything I did, from not speaking up before to the way I exposed them. I also feel guilty for the lack of connection between all of my family and me, and maybe I could have done more. So, Ada for ruining my parents' wedding when they forgot about me. Commenter, NTA, can you move in with grandma? Their history of rebuffing you whenever you try to participate with them says this wasn't a one off. It's like they don't even consider you family. No judge is going to force you back to their house at 17. If you have a place to go, get your things and your documents and go. Oop, hi, thank you for your comment. I would like to live with my grandma, but I am due to start my classes in college soon. I was able to arrange it for a start later on the school year. And my school is in the same city where we live, but grandma lives in another state, so I would have to drop out to leave. I don't have any other family here, just friends, and I don't want to be an imposition. Commenter, does your school have dorm rooms? Is this something you could plan for next semester? Or finish this semester out and look at transferring to a school near your grandmother? Oop, the school has dorms, but I don't qualify for financial aid, and I don't know how much they cost. Apparently, a lot, since I have a friend that's going to go to the same college as me, and she has just rented in studio near campus that seems to be a better deal according to her. And the plan had been for me to stay at home during my stud, i.e., oop, my grandma was not able to attend the actual wedding. She lives in another state, and traveling is very difficult for her due to mobility issues, so we only see her when we go to my mom's hometown. I know she saw my FB post and called me to ask how I was doing, but I put on a brave face for her, and I haven't called her since, but we text. I don't know if she knows more of the context of what happened or if my parents have told her a different version of the story, but she is very sweet to me and has always called out my parents for their favoritism. I just feel exhausted lately from everything, and the last thing I want is to bother her, so I haven't called her again since barely after the wedding. Commenter, at a certain point, it just feels intentional. Did you ever learn what motivated your family to ignore you? I feel like Op could use some insights here, and you have experience with this. Oop, I have no idea other than the fact that they are very close-knit between themselves, and I don't seem to fit in. I've never liked the same hobbies and activities as them. I'm quite an introvert and like being at home watching movies or reading a book. Meanwhile, both of my parents love to be the life of the party and host events at our home, often for their friends, and my siblings also enjoy these events. When I was a kid, I was more shy and always hid in my bedroom or the basement to avoid people. But as I grew up, I started participating more in these parties, but my parents don't seem to care. That is the only explanation I can find to their behavior, but I still feel like it's not enough. Commenter, if it's real, could Op be an affair child? She is quite a few years younger than her siblings, and it would explain a lot. Oop, I have no idea about that. It's something that has never crossed my mind. I feel like my parents have always been a very close couple and spend a lot of time together and seem very happy, so I don't think my mother would cheat. Enter, downvoted. Yeah, seems a bit odd to me that Op, called Forgotten Child, made an account specifically to create this one post. I understand why people use throwaways, but I'm always a bit suspicious that these accounts are made for the purpose of creating rage bait. Oop, I created a throwaway because I didn't want to give out my personal info, which you could easily find on my main, and unfortunately, this is not fake. All of you are the first to ever bring the affair theory to my mind, and I don't know what to make of it. I hope it's not true. Commenter, first class tickets for the wedding party and other guests, but not their youngest child. How is this even possible? Then they don't fix it by getting you a first class ticket, but an Ikomoni ticket, because it is cheaper. Did she even have accommodations? No dress either. Just wear whatever. Now, it's your fault that they are thoughtless? Hell no. FFS, these parents suck. Oop, I think when she said a cheaper airline, she meant it because it was more likely that way that I could get there on time since their flight was apparently all booked out. Again, I don't know about accommodations. They made no mention of that. They all stayed at the same hotel where they had the ceremony, but that's all I know. Commenter she should put her energy into finding better sources of fulfillment, as opposed to continuing any fight for minimum acknowledgement from her parents and siblings. Oop, I honestly don't have the strength to do much these days. I'm set to start college later in the year, and the plan was that I would live home since it's not far, but now I just want to leave, but I don't know how. I don't have enough savings or a job right now, and the idea of going out to get one just feels so overwhelming right now. I don't want to drop out, but I want to go elsewhere. I wrote this yesterday because I needed to vent, but I didn't want to create more drama. That's why it's anonymous. Commenter, if she is PLA and S for college, she should go ahead with the emancipation process. Emancipation will save her a fortune on her education, and I guarantee you those crap parents she is did not intend to help her in any way. Oop, the idea before all of this was that I would go to a college in my hometown. It's a great college downtown that I'm very happy I was accepted to, and a couple of my HS friends are going there too, and live at home. I was saving to buy a car for easier access, and they were going to pay for my tuition and all of that, but now I just want to leave this house. Commenter, be strong. Don't let them get under your skin. Even if you have to get roommates or move in with a friend, leave as soon as you're comfortable with finances. There are Facebook groups and such for looking for roommates, especially in Hochul areas. Oop, I know that's what I should be doing. I do have a friend that is moving to a studio apartment near our college, but I don't have a job at the moment, and I don't want to be a burden to her. She and I are close, so I'm sure she would offer for me to move in with her, but I don't want to be a burden. Also, I don't have a job at the moment, so I couldn't pay rent, so that's something else I need to do at the moment. Update 1. Thank you so much. A few days ago, I could barely find the energy to get out of bed, and my family's comments had made me really believe that I was guilty for all that had passed, but after seeing the responses to my post and all the support you guys were giving me, I felt somewhat reaffirmed in my actions and feelings towards my family. I'm still fighting the feelings of guilt and depression, but whenever I start to spiral, I think on how much this community of strangers has had my back, and I try to calm myself down with your words. Thanks to your input and advice, I finally decided to call my grandma and tell her the full story. Just to clarify a point before going on, I said this in the comments, but I feel like I should put it. Here also, my grandma 77F did not attend the wedding. She lives several states away and has mobility issues, so she doesn't travel anymore. We went to visit her around Easter, and that's when she commented that I might read a poem at the ceremony, but that was the last time I saw her in person before all this. She's always been very loving to me and has called out my parents in the past for their favoritism, but it's hard for her to play a more active role in my upbringing since she lives so far, and I'm always worried about bothering her due to her age and health condition. She had a minor stroke a few years back and is now back to normal, but I still worry. Anyway, I called her and laid out everything that had happened with the wedding and how my parents didn't even buy me a ticket to go with them. She came to the same conclusion that most commenters did when I told her that it was simply impossible that they had forgotten and that they did it on purpose. I cried on the phone with her, laying out how I was feeling, how this has been going on forever, how I feel in the aftermath, and most importantly, about my need to get out. She was extremely sweet and comforting to me and told me that I had nothing else to worry about because she had my back 100% and told me to take it easy, but make plans for my future and that she'd help me. After that conversation, which lasted about 2 hours, I felt better, and I decided to listen to her and start moving to figure something out for the next school year. I have a friend who is going to lease a studio next to our future campus. She has a great relationship with her parents, but she has 5 younger siblings and wants to be more independent, so that's why she decided to move out. I asked her if I could move in with her temporarily and that I would pay her rent as soon as I got a job. She immediately accepted and told me not to worry about rent or anything else until I was in a better position. And we had a good cry together when I told her all about my parents' wedding incident. So this all happened a couple days ago, and I was planning on doing the update then, but my grandma called my parents and my siblings to lecture them about how they were treating me. My brother just sent me a text afterwards with a half-hearted apologize saying that he didn't know I wasn't included and that he just thought I wouldn't have fun on the trip, and then I posted the pic just to create drama. My sister, on the other hand, berated me and told me that I kept trying to make public my own problems and pinning them on my family when they are all innocent. It has been weird with my parents ever since they came back from the trip, and at first they berated me and were furious with me. And after that, we've just been ignoring each other. After my grandma called them, They came into my room telling me that if I wanted to put this whole issue to rest, I should shut up about it, and that this could all had already blown over if only I had kept my mouth shut. I just asked them to leave my room, and then I called my grandma again to tell her what had gone down. She then told me that she and my uncle had bought plane tickets to come down to see me. This was something that I was actually scared about because my grandma's health is not the best, and this kind of effort is a lot for her. And I know how complicated it is for her to get on a plane, so I tried to dissuade her from coming and told her everything would be okay. But she wouldn't listen and told me that she was long overdue a conversation with my parents and that she wanted to see me. I'm stressed for her, and I feel again like I forced her to take a long, uncomfortable trip because of me and that maybe I should have dealt with this myself. I do want to see her, and I wish for nothing more than to hug her right now, but I'm worried about her. At least my uncle, Mom's older brother, is coming with her, but I hope she doesn't exhaust herself or nothing happens to her because that would break me. They arrive tomorrow and have not informed my parents of their trip. My grandma asked me to keep it until she gets here. I hope she's able to make my parents see the mistake in their actions or, at the very least, help me break the news to them that I'm moving out very soon, and I plan on being no contact with them. I don't know. I'm worried about her having to do so much for me and bothering her, but I also appreciate and love her so much for doing all this for me. Update 2, there's been a lot of people messaging me and commenting on the post, and I haven't had time to answer to no one until today, and I'm sorry for that. You all have been so helpful in caring for me and my story, and it's been truly eye-opening and terrifying to see how many people have gone through similar stories of neglect and abuse. And I just want to thank you all for taking time out of your day to send some kind words to this internet stranger. This update will be long, so sorry about that. I'm just going to continue where I left off. So my grandma called me to tell me she was coming here to see me and help me out. I was very stressed about it because my grandma has a very hard time traveling. So for her to take this trip meant that she would be under enormous stress. And I felt responsible for her since I was the one that called her. She arrived early Monday morning with my uncle, and I went to get her at the airport. NGL, it was a very intense and emotional moment, and as soon as I saw her, I ran to her arms and broke down sobbing. I don't even know if I was able to tell her anything at that moment because of how hard I was crying, and I had so many things to say. Thank you for coming, for being so good to me, for having my back. I'm sorry to have made you take this trip. I feel awful at home. I don't know if my parents love me, but I know you do. Am I an affair child? I truly was hit with all of this, plus the guilt and the anxiety all at once when I saw her. But she held me tight in her arms, telling me everything was going to be okay. My uncle hugged us as well. I don't know how long we stayed like this, but it must have been a while until my uncle told me we should get going. We grabbed a cab and went to their hotel. My grandma had teary eyes and I could feel her breathing heavily, which scared me, but she kept hugging me and smiling all the way. She had reserved a double room so I could stay with her for these days. And once they were settled in and I was more calm, we sat down and I poured everything out for them. The years of neglect and the emotional abuse, how I was feeling miserable after the trip, but also for years now. How my parents have been trying to make me feel guilty for all of this that has happened. How I was scared about my future but my end. One priority at the moment now was to move out of that house even at the expense of my schoolwork. How I've made arrangements to move in with my friend and I was looking for a job, and I told them about this post and how some people thought I might be an affair child and that I was beginning to question that as well. It was a lot and I could tell they were both really affected by what I was saying, but they kept comforting me and making me feel safe to open up to them. After I unloaded all my concerns with them, my grandma reassured me that I had nothing to worry about anymore and that she would be here for me always. First of all, she reassured me that I was not an affair child and that both my parents were thrilled when my mother got pregnant with me and that she knew the ultimate deal breaker for my mom was cheating, and she believed it was the same for my father. Apparently, the favoritism began showing when I was around 3 to 4 years old, when my parents were constantly complaining about having a young kid in the house, and they were bothered because they could take my older siblings to their stuff, but not me. And I was also very shy and a bit of a crybaby, which they had no patience with. A&D made me very different from my siblings. She told me that she knew that my parents had saved more than enough for my college. They're really well off, so that had never been a concern for me until now, thinking they might pull the funds away from me for my education, but that if they tried to not pay for my schooling, she would take care of it and that she just wouldn't let me drop out because of money concerns. She also told me she would help me with rent and an allowance to move out. She was very generous, and I thanked her for it all. But I also told her that this experience had been eye-opening in the sense that I never realized how privileged I had been economically all my life. For all their faults, my parents have pampered me, money-wise, all my life. I went to private school, I have a rather large monthly allowance, I've had a card for years now, and they have never objected to any of my expenses. Seeing the stories here, I realized how good I've had it so far, and how being dependable on them all my life made me so exposed to losing everything. And I want to be independent now, not just from my parents, but from everyone. I feel like I need to learn to stand up on my own. Writing this and having just read all the stories of people in truly awful situations makes me feel like I've been a spoiled brat all my life, TBH. She insisted on me accepting my help until I don't need it anymore, and I accepted that. But I'll still will look for a job and try to make it out on my own. We relaxed for a while in the hotel because we were all exhausted from the morning. But in the afternoon, we grabbed a cab and went to my house. My parents were extremely surprised to see my grandma and uncle with me when I entered the door. But before they could say anything, my grandma told me to go pack all my essentials while they talked to them. I rushed upstairs and I could hear my grandma and uncle berating my parents for all that they had put me through. At first, I also heard my parents trying to defend themselves, but eventually they quiet down. When I came downstairs with 2 suitcases and my backpack full to the brim with everything important that I had in my room, they were all in the living room. My father was beet red and my mother was sobbing like a child. And when she saw me, she extended her arms on my direction, saying she was sorry, but I just said save it with the coldest tone I could muster. And my dad said that I didn't have to be jerked to, which both my uncle and grandma told him to shut up. I left the house at that moment and waited for the cab outside. In the hotel, my grandma reassured me that I wouldn't have to go back to them, and that they told her my college tuition was never in question for them, and that they had planned to throw me an extravagant birthday party to make up for the wedding mess, and were going to be giving me a car as an apology for everything. But my grandma was having none of that BS because it was pretty obvious to her that they were only trying to save face, and they were coming up with this things on the fly, and that a party and a car would not make up for all that they have put me through. Apparently, the moment that broke my mother was when she told her that I had even questioned my paternity, and she started crying then. But my grandma told her that what else could they expect when they had excluded me repeatedly from all family events since I was a child. She told me that she would make sure they made the payments to my school, unless I preferred to completely cut ties with them and have her pay until I can pay myself, and I asked her to do that. I felt bad because I feel like it's not her responsibility, but I truly don't want anything else from my parents anymore. And although my grandma is pretty well off herself, she's not as wealthy as my parents, but she reassured me that everything is all right and that everything going to me would be taken away from my mom's inheritance. So the next day we went with my friend, he, our parents, and grandma to the studio where we were planning to move. And immediately upon arriving, my grandma said, absolutely not. I knew from pictures that the studio was very, very small and dirty, but we saw water damage and mold in the bathroom and kitchenette, and there was also rust in the little old appliances. I knew all of this beforehand, but I figured I could live with that, at least for a while. But the thing that the adults pointed out that actually made me and my friend change our minds was the fact that this studio was street level, in a bad neighborhood, in a building that didn't seem particularly safe and had bullet holes on the walls, which I didn't even know what those were until my friend's dad pointed it out. And so grandma and my friend's parents said they would look for an apartment for us in a better location, and they'd help cover the costs. Both my friend and I want to be independent, but we realize that with our most likely minimum wage jobs in such a high demand area, we won't be able to find anything better on our own. So the plan is we're going to look for a 2-bedroom apartment, and me and my friend are going to pay what we had previously planned for the studio, and her parents and my grandma will cover the difference. I know it's still quite spoiled of me to expect that help from my grandma, but after seeing the studio in person, I truly wouldn't have felt safe there. My friend's parents, who were somewhat aware of what I was going through, told me that I could move in with them until we find a nice apartment, to which I'm extremely grateful since grandma is going back in a couple of days, and I've been staying in the hotel with her ever since. Apparently, my friend, her parents, and my grandma spoke about this before coming to me to make sure I had some safe place to stay until we move into the apartment, which is still to be found. I teared up a little as I thanked them, seeing how people were rallying behind me to offer help. Since then, I've been moving me of the stuff I had left at my parents and setting my space and my friends. My mom keeps crying and apologizing every time I go back. And even my father has said sorry, but I remain distant and cold towards them. My sister called and said that our mother was a mess and that I was a dick for what I had done. But before she could say anything else, I hanged up the phone and blocked her. I was going to block my brother as well when I saw that he had sent me a very long message apologizing again and again for all that he has done to me and for not realizing our parents were treating me so poorly. He says he's been doing a lot of self reflection on the days since Grandma called and realized that he had been in the wrong for assuming I wasn't on the trip because I wouldn't want to go and for just allowing my parents to exclude me for all those years. I sent a brief reply, thanking him for his words, but telling him I need space and I was not ready to accept his apology. I feel like he might be genuine because he has never been nasty to me the way my sister has, just aloof towards me, but I also feel like I need to keep him away for the moment. Also, keeping a bridge up with my family feels like the right thing to do right now that everything is so fresh. Maybe in the future he will show me he's just as nasty as everyone else, and I'd block him. But as long as he respects my boundaries, I feel better not cutting him off completely. I've also made an appointment with a therapist who specializes in neglected teens, and I have my first preliminary visit next week, again funded by my grandma, which makes me feel ever more eager to find a job ASAP to take the burden off of her, even if she tells me time and time again she is happy to do all of this for me. That's where things stand right now. I don't know if I'll update again, maybe when I start classes or move to the apartment, but right now I'm just trying to enjoy some time with my grandma and my uncle and learn to grow and get rid of these feelings of guilt and depression that have been plaguing me for so long. I want to thank once again all of this community for being so nice and helpful to me, and all of you who have messaged me with your own personal stories of getting kicked out or having to learn how to make it on your own at a too early age. You've helped me feel a lot less alone and made me realize that things can get better if I work hard for it. I feel kind of spoiled for having such an amazing support system on my grandma, uncles, and my friend. But you all guys are right. Reaching out has been the absolute best decision I could have taken, and opening up about my feelings to those who love me and to all of you internet friends has absolutely saved me. So, thank you. Really, I'm more grateful than words can ever tell. Commenter, I'm curious. When you've gone back to collect things, what exactly have your parents been saying? Oop, my mother has been crying every time I've gone there and just saying, I'm sorry, over and over again. But I haven't had a conversation with her, so she hasn't mentioned specifics, but I also haven't given her a chance. My father has been mostly silent, staring at me whenever I come and go, but when he apologized, it was more along the lines of, I'm sorry for everything than bringing any wrongdoing for his part on anything. I don't know if they are shocked right now by everything that's happening. I myself feel overwhelmed and haven't had time to process, or if they don't think they've done anything wrong and are just acting for grandma. I don't know myself, so I can't really answer. Commenter backslash backslash. Don't cut off your nose to spite your face in terms of college money. Your parents need to foot that bill in full. Don't hamper yourself with that expense when they can afford it. It is the very least they can do. Oop, my grandma has already told me that it's unacceptable for me not to go to college. If the reason is that my parents won't pay, and she won't all owe, a W me to get a student loan either, I asked if she would co-sign and she flat out told me no, that she would pay herself rather than see me stressed about the financial aspect of it. I won't jeopardize my education for my parents, but since I have this option to have my grandma pay, that's what I'll do, because I rather this money not come from my parents, knowing them they would dangle this fact for the rest of my life like I owed them. I'm very lucky that my grandma will take care of this. I feel like I don't deserve her. Commenter, I hope you aren't feeling guilty for coming from a well-off family. Oop, you're not spoiled? You seem more self-aware than a lot of people with your same background. Working and living a life independent of your family will open up the world to you. I truly don't think you're a spoiled rich kid. Working for the things we need and want can create character and teach us so many things, i.e., how to handle difficult people and situations professionally, the value of each hour and dollar earned, teamwork, societal structures, and so on. I'm glad you have a safety net with your grandma and don't listen to anyone who would degrade you for that. A lot of us are living hand to mouth and paycheck to paycheck, and I absolutely do not wish that on someone just starting out in life. If you ever want to update about how things are, I'm definitely going to read it. Thank you for sharing a very difficult time in your life. Oop, I do feel more than guilty angry about my background and how blind I've been all my life to all my privileges. This self-awareness that you're talking about, I have discovered in the last couple of weeks because when I first fought with my parents, I barely thought about money or how would I sustain myself. That's always been a given for me, which I guess is nice considering I'm not yet 18. But after posting here and seeing messages of people who have had to struggle so much with the financial repercussions of being neglected or cutting out your family or going out to the world at a very young age, made me realize how out of touch with reality I was.